Video, I will share with you this Google Doc on pre-tax and post-tax contributions and how you can simulate how much money you will contribute and how much money you will get at the end of the month or end of 2 weeks in your paycheck. So let me walk you through the sheet. The goal of the sheet is that you can, for yourself, determine what percentage pre-tax money you want to contribute, what percentage post-tax money you want to contribute, let's say in 401k, ESPP, employee stock purchase, or whatever that may be. So you will get an idea if you want to maximize on those deductions and if you want to actually hit those maximum contributable limits, then what cadence should you follow? What percentage should you do? And what do you expect in terms of paycheck? So that simulation sheet would be helpful. This sheet is available in the comment description of this video below, and you can clone it. It's a read-only sheet, but you'd have to make a copy and then you can play around with it. So I've put in some dummy numbers here. So let me walk you through as to how you can understand what the sheet is. So this is where you can make changes. Here you can put in any salary. You can put in what is the pre-tax limit for the year. This usually changes every year. So 2020, last I checked, it was 19,000. And at Max Sources, pre-tax and post-tax was 57,000. So that means that the difference between the two is what you can actually contribute post-tax, which is 38,000 or so. Then you would have to look at your tax deduction as to how much tax is being deducted every paycheck for you. This may not be your actual tax rate, but based on your salary and based on your first paycheck, you can quickly understand what percentage this is from your employer. So it's important for you to fill in this employer percentage that is being deducted because that changes the formula. If you have 12 pay periods or 24, then that's this. ESPP limit in IRS this year 2020 25,000, and so actually it's 10% less of that because of the discount you get, and so it's 22,500 actual ESPP limit. Post-tax limit, again, that's calculated based on the total and then pre, and then this comes around 38, and then based on your tax you have the gross pay that you can expect, so 24% minus the monthly bi-weekly salary that you expect. So 24 pay periods is around $6,000 in your. So out of this $6,000, if you were to make, and these are the two columns where you can play around, change the percentages. I've said, hey, 35 pre-tax, post-tax 40, and then ESPP 15%, right? So that's the sum of these two, I think at max could be 75. So you'd have to play around with this, and then you can go to 75 later. And then this could be 0 to 15 at max 15. So you can play around saying, hey, I want to actually not do any deductions here in pre-tax, but I just want to go all the way to 75 for everything, right? So you can play around and the numbers will change. It'll also say that, hey, you can expect to get no salary when you do that and things like that. So play around with this column, column D, column E, as to when you want to contribute what. Also, just put in this number, that's it. And then if the limits have changed, then put in this specific field should be updated. I believe this is calculated, so I'm going to just move this down. These are all numbers that you can fill in, right? Pre-tax IRS limit and ESPP limits are, you can Google it and you will quickly get it, right? So that's that. Now, and you can play around with column D and column E, and you can find out. So let's go through one row at a time. The first pay period. So pre-tax, you said you want to contribute 35% of your gross pay, which comes around $2,100, right? $2,188. So pre-tax, you're going to contribute $21,800 in your 401k. Post-tax will be the minimum of what remains, right? So let's calculate your taxes. So when you pay, you already 21,800, 2188 is to be subtracted from this. So you get the tax that you will pay is after the pre-tax contribution. So I subtracted the pre-tax contribution from the gross pay, and then I calculated 25% tax rate. So I end up paying around $1,000 for tax, pre-tax this much, and total that remains for me after, and let's say I pay ESPP 15% post-tax, right? So that again is 15% of this, and that is this much. So you wanted to pay ESPP that much. So the amount that actually remains from you for you is gross pay minus pre-tax minus ESPP post-tax contribution, um, also minus the tax. That's the amount you have post-tax. And let's say you put in 40% of what you want to contribute, then you're saying I want to contribute 2,500, but you only have 2,100 remaining. So at max you can pay 2,100, right? So that is this number. So this calculated as a minimum of what you have versus what you want, which is the want is here and what you have is this much. So the minimum of that is what you will contribute in your post-tax. So that's calculated based on the minimum of these two. So that's how you contribute. So you, with this formula, you can quickly say at $150,000 salary, you will not get income for the first 6 months, meaning zero income. If you want to maximize on the 19,000 IRS limit for pre-tax, 38,000 for post-tax, and you want to also contribute 22,500 ESPP. If you do that for the first 6 months, forget about getting any money with $15,000. Similarly, you can change it. You can say, hey, my salary is around 100,000 and I want to maximize. So then you will quickly realize that you'll have to change this formula. So if you see this, the sum of this is around 11,000. So you will have to just copy this to say, hey, just go on. And then so then you will quickly realize that if your salary is different, you would have to change this as well. You would have to constantly contribute until this number here goes to 19,000 or close to that, right? So then you will keep continuing to change this, and you realize, oh, I need to have 35% on, and then you see that that's closer. Once that's closer, then you don't change it. Again, the sum of these two should be 75. So here you'll have to change it to 40 at max here, right? Sorry. So that needs to change. Then you will realize that that's the first column. So you'll have to change this, and you will have to change this to find out that, hey, you're now close to 19,000. Similarly, you'll have to change the post-tax one. So this is basically, you'll have to override this one. So you just copy this over and keep going. So you'll realize you can pay, you'd want to go to 38,000. So you can continue copying this, copy this again, it's still 35, so you can continue going, right? And now you're 38,000 approximately, right? So with 100,000 salary, if you want to maximize on all of this, you realize quickly that, hey, you only get paid the last month of the year or something like that, right? So that is an interesting understanding. So the higher your salary goes, let's say 200,000, you can quickly hit these limits. So you'll quickly realize, first again, pre-tax has to be close to 19,000. So you will change this. And then you should remove this because you cannot contribute. There you go, it's closed, right? So that's good enough. So then you make that change. And then again, here you see that this is 79,000. So you'll have to change this. Hey, I can't do that. And you have to go that down all the way till 30. Oh no, 30. So copy that. 38, right? So that's close, right? So that's what you will have. So you'll quickly realize that, hey, for higher income folks, they'll max out these limits very quickly. In this case, maybe 3 months, right? 3 to 4 months. And then ESPP again, it's this much, right? So what you do realize is that ESPP also will stop at some point because this is 28,000, but the max is 22,500, right? So here, so you start making money here more and more, right? So you can play around with this. All you have to do is make sure your income is right, which is this should be accurate, and then this should be accurate. And then if these numbers have changed on limits, then you should change them. So make changes here as to how much you want to contribute, and then make sure this number pre-tax is close to 19,000, right? So here this is wrong. So I'll have to remove that, right? So 19,000, it's now less than or equal. And then make sure this number here is close to 38,000, the limits. So then you keep remove this. Now you're close, right? And then same thing for here. If you see these numbers exceeding the 22,500 limit, then you'll want to keep changing that. And then you'll quickly realize how much you end up making at the end of the paycheck, right? What this is useful in identifying is that if you max out here with 75 and zeros here, then what will happen is the ESPP will suffer. So you will not be able to contribute to ESPP. And so for certain salary ranges, if you run out of ESPP contributions, now you just lost the opportunity. So you want to play around with these numbers and contributions in such a way that you end up maximizing your ESPP at the minimum, also pre-tax, because now the employer ends up giving you money, so on contributions and matches, so you'd want to maximize on that. And ideally you also want to maximize on post-tax. So based on what you want to do, you can play around with this and get a good idea as to what your goals are and are you hitting them, and what do you expect to get in your paycheck based on the salary you make, right? So you can change this and then everything changes, right? So hope that was useful. This exercise helped me understand how to balance this so that I expect when I get paid, and I expect when I'll have the maximums that I want to hit, and I also know when to change what in what limits so that I maximize the goals that I have. So again, this is not an advice from an expert. I'm no expert here. You should talk to your financial advisor for help. This is just some of my learnings that applies to me and not necessarily applies to anyone. So there may be a lot of mistakes here. If there are, please share as to how I can optimize this and make it better. But this is just for informational purpose only. All right, hope you found this useful. You can find this sheet at the description of this video, and you can clone it and you can play around with it, and you can change it completely. All right, thanks.